Hi, I'm Lilika Makabe from the University of Osaka. In this video, I will introduce our work, Spectral Sensitivity Estimation with an Uncalibrated Diffraction Grating, presented at ICCV2025. In recent years, advances in multi-view scene reconstruction technology have made it easier than ever to digitize real-world scenes. These technologies are increasingly being utilized in fields such as e-heritage, where cultural assets are digitally preserved. Generally, when the same scene is photographed with different cameras, or even with the same camera but with different white balance settings, the colors recorded can vary significantly. In other words, it is difficult to determine the true color of an object. For example, when comparing two artworks photographed with different cameras, it is challenging to distinguish whether the observed color differences are due to the characteristics of the cameras or to the differences in the artworks themselves. This, in turn, underscores the importance of accurately understanding each camera's characteristics in order to address these challenges. When we capture the real world with a camera, the information we obtain is limited to just 3 RGB channels. However, light in the real world does not exist as just 3 RGB channels. Instead, it spans a wide range of wavelengths with varying intensities. A camera captures this light using sensors and color filters which are designed to record the amount of light passing through each filter. As a result, the RGB values we obtain are determined by the camera's spectral sensitivity, which is the characteristic response of each channel to different wavelengths. Mathematically speaking, each RGB values can be expressed as the inner product between the spectral sensitivity and the incoming light spectrum at each pixel location. As previously mentioned, even when capturing the same scene, differences in camera settings or the cameras themselves can result in significant variation in recorded colors. This is primarily due to the differences in this spectral sensitivity. Therefore, accurately estimating the spectral sensitivity of each camera is crucial for color matching, enabling us to properly evaluate the colors of objects photographed under different conditions. Existing studies on spectral sensitivity estimation can be broadly categorized as follows. First, there are approaches that use specially designed markers such as fluorescent markers. While these markers are engineered to provide richer information, they have the drawback of requiring custom manufacturing, which makes them difficult to reproduce. Second, there are methods that use commercially available markers such as color checkers. Although these are more accessible than specially designed markers, it is necessary to measure the spectral data of each color patch, which can be costly and labor-intensive. Finally, there are specialized measurement devices, which we also use to obtain ground truth data. However, these devices are extremely expensive and are not practical for widespread use. In this study, we propose a method for estimating camera spectral sensitivity using observations of an incoming light through a diffraction grating. So, our experimental setting consists of a slit for incident light, a diffraction grating, and a camera. When we observe light through a diffraction grating, we not only capture the light itself, but also the diffracted pattern of the incoming light. By capturing the incident light through a diffraction grating, we obtain observations as shown on the lower right. From these images, we estimate the camera's spectral sensitivity. This approach requires only the calibration of the incoming light spectrum and does not rely on any additional target calibration. So, what is diffraction grating? It is an optical element made of many narrow slits arranged periodically. This structure separates light by wavelength, propagating the different wavelengths to the different directions. For example, when such an incident light spectrum is directed onto a diffraction grating, each wavelength is dispersed in a different direction. This allows the intensity of each wavelength component to be observed at different points on a screen. Recalling that without a diffraction grating, the RGB values are given by the inner product of the incident light spectrum and the camera's spectral sensitivity, the observation of diffracted light through the camera results in a rainbow-like pattern. Mathematically speaking, this can be represented as the element-wise product of the incident light spectrum and the camera's spectral sensitivity. Ideally, under diffracted light, the image formation model can be expressed as the element-wise product of the incoming light spectrum, or illumination, and the camera's spectral sensitivity. Here, strictly speaking, it is necessary to consider the correspondence between each pixel and wavelength in diffracted observations, since we know the light is spatially dispersed, but we don't know which pixel corresponds to which wavelength component in the diffracted light observations. But this part will be omitted in this presentation. That said, inexpensive holographic diffraction grating are not perfect, and therefore, in addition to the ideal model, in practice, the diffraction grating exhibits an unknown wavelength-dependent efficiency, and the image observed through the camera is effectively biased by this efficiency. In summary, the diffracted light image formation model can be represented as the element-wise product of the illumination, the diffraction grating efficiency, and the camera's spectral sensitivity. Mathematically, this can be written as the product of a diagonal matrix of illumination, diffraction grating efficiency, and the sensitivity, which corresponds to the observed values. Here, assuming that all efficiency values are positive, meaning that each wavelength is attenuated to some extent, but none is completely blocked, the efficiency of the diffraction grating, denoted as eta here, can be moved to the right-hand side of the equation as its reciprocal. Finally, this leads to a homogeneous constraint on the unknown diffraction grating efficiency eta and the unknown camera spectral sensitivity S. For the direct light image formation model, this is essentially equivalent to capturing the incident light without a diffraction grating. Therefore, it can be expressed as the inner product of the incident light I and the spectral sensitivity S. Based on the three RGB channels, we can derive three separate equations, resulting in inhomogeneous constraints on the camera's spectral sensitivity. In summary, the observation of diffracted light provides homogeneous constraints, while the direct light observation provides inhomogeneous constraints, and combining them all together, both the unknown diffraction grating efficiency and the spectral sensitivity can be solved linearly. This shows the results of spectral sensitivity estimation in a real-world environment. We plot the estimated sensitivity alongside the ground truth and also display the error rates for each estimation. A comparison includes two baseline, a method using a color checker, and a learning-based approach that leverage camera data. Overall, our method demonstrates better performance compared to existing approaches. Okay, this is a summary. We propose a method for spectral sensitivity estimation using a diffraction grating observations. Thank you for watching.